Welcome to the Casual Birder podcast. I'm Susie Buttress. As a casual birder, I take time to watch birds as I go about my daily tasks. In my show, I'll tell you about the wild birds I've seen, speak with other enthusiasts, take bird walks, and share stories from listeners around the world. In episode 80, I speak with Jocelyn Anderson, photographer and birder. Jocelyn lives in Michigan and started photographing birds around 4 years ago. Her award-winning bird portraits are absolutely stunning. On Jocelyn's Twitter or Instagram accounts, you can also find gorgeous slow-motion videos of woodpeckers, chickadees and nuthatches all taking food from her hand. I adore these videos and am not so secretly extremely envious of her experiences. In our interview, Jocelyn shares tales of the birds she's photographed at her local park in southeastern Michigan, including the fascinating story of a gosling adopted by a Sandhill Crane family. There are also tips on photographing birds and the benefits of joining local birding groups. Some notes about the interview. I spoke with Jocelyn at the beginning of the year, so the Sandhill Crane story happened last year. There was a technical hitch with the recording, so there is a section where you'll notice a change in the sound, but I hope it doesn't detract too much from the conversation. I've been following you on Twitter for quite some time. One of the things that really drew me to your account were these absolutely beautiful slow-mo videos you take of birds feeding from your hand. And I am so jealous.
Well, it is an incredible experience. Like, I've probably hand-fed the birds thousands of times over the last few years, and it is an experience that never gets old to have like these beautiful birds like have that trust to come take a peanut from your hand. And I've learned so much about the different personalities of the birds. The Tufted Titmouse, which is my personal favorite bird, they can be quite sassy at times, which I enjoy, like watching and just seeing their interactions, and seeing the larger birds such as the red-winged blackbirds and have those red-bellied woodpeckers, to have them trust and land in your hand is really a special experience.
There's really a really wide range of birds that will come to the hand from what I've seen from your videos. Can you just tell us a little bit about where you are?
So the park that I go to, and I'm in the same area, is in southeastern Michigan. We're about an hour away from Detroit. The park I go to is called Kensington Metro Park, and it's in Milford. And I encourage anyone who's in the area, or if they want to take a day trip, it really is a special place to go in and feed the birds and have that experience.
And how did you start feeding them? Were they already being fed by other people in the park?
Yeah, so I'm not sure exactly when this started. It sounded like it started decades ago, but some very patient people have taught the birds that they can trust people and that they can take food from people's hands. And what has happened is that the older birds will teach the younger birds that it's okay to come grab a peanut or a sunflower seed from a person's hand. And I can usually tell who the younger birds are, because there's some, the chickadees, they'll just, I'll show up, they'll start chattering at me, they'll grab a sunflower seed from my hand. But there's some birds that are a little standoffish, like they're watching what the others are doing, and then they'll usually like fly by and like really quickly grab a seed. So this is something that started years and years ago and has been passed on from generation to generation from the birds.
This is an experience that I absolutely adore having myself. And when we've been on holiday, I've mentioned several times about being in Nova Scotia, and the chickadees there, I had wonderful experiences with. They became very confiding and would come to the hand extremely readily. And I think there, where we were staying was not very built up. So I think maybe chickadees are a little bit more brave, or rather opportunistic, when it comes to seeing foods available. And they learn from each other very quickly. So within, a day or so of being in the location, I would have them taking food from my hand. And then for the entire period we were there, you'd be getting more and more birds taking it. But then other places I've been, it's been not like that at all.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing you got to experience that. I mean, there's really nothing like that feeling. And if anyone is wondering like what exactly that feels like, the best analogy that I can come up with is, so chickadees weigh, our black-capped chickadees weigh about the same as a pencil. And if you were to lay a pencil across the tip of your fingers, that is very similar to what it feels like. So in case anyone listening out there is like curious to what exactly that chickadee feels like, that is a very similar feeling.
That's absolutely it. And then just the only other feeling you get is the little feeling of their claws as they grip hold.
Yes. Yeah.
And I also know that it can be quite cold where you are.
Oh, yes.
And I do feel for you when you're doing this, because when I was doing it in Nova Scotia, it wasn't during the winter time. It wasn't even during their coldest time. Having your hand exposed for the period of time it takes for them to decide they're going to come over. It's just like, please come now, because my fingers are going to break. I can just feel the cold breaking my fingers.
It's funny you mention that, because I have had some like very nice people being like, oh, this is like, I love your videos, but like, please take care of your hands. So I do always take hand warmers with me, because that helps a lot. And you can actually tell like the temperature from the day. Like if I'm wearing my little my fingerless gloves, like if I'm wearing the fingerless gloves, like it is cold out. And the reason I don't wear the full gloves, like that would be better for my hands, but I've found that the birds don't like landing on their fabric. I wonder if their claws get caught in it a bit. So I've switched to the fingerless, which my hands get colder, but it is absolutely worth it. You know, if it makes the birds happy, I'm totally down with the fingerless gloves. I've got my hand warmers. I'm good.
Excellent. Tell me your last experience with hand feeding.
Let me see. My last experience was Sunday, and it was pretty, I want to say the temperatures were, they were in the 20s. So it was a pretty typical Michigan winter day. It was pretty brisk out. It was actually, I got to the park a little bit later than I normally do. When I get to the park in the morning, there's tons of birds waiting for their breakfast. I got to the park a little bit later, it's a little after lunch, and the park was absolutely packed. Like it was hard to find parking, which is a great thing. Like there were lots of people out there feeding birds. And one of the things I really enjoy seeing is parents bringing their kids, because it's such a special experience. And to have kids get that connection with nature is something that's very special. There was one time, I have not seen this bird in a few years, but there was a male northern cardinal, so this beautiful red bird, and he was the only cardinal in the park that would feed from people's hands. And,
oh, wow.
I think it was, I think they were grandparents and their son, who looked to be, or their grandson, I should say, he was about like 6 or 7. And there was this cardinal just, hanging out nearby in the tree watching them. This couple pointed him out to me, and I was like, oh, would you like to feed the birds? And I'm like, oh, really? Wow. So I gave him some peanuts, and the son got to feed this bird, and it was just, they were just amazed. It was something so special. Like, he was like shaking my hand, like patting me on the back. I was like, I didn't do anything. Like, it's just all about the peanuts, really. But it is such a magical experience to be able to like get that close to the birds and just have their trust. It's a great place.
So there's nowhere near me that I know of where I can hand feed birds, and it's something that I really do get an awful lot of joy from. But on New Year's Eve, we stopped at a country park that's a couple of hours from us, but it was on our way back from Cornwall, where we'd been for Christmas. And we had been to this place once before, and I knew that there were lots of birds that potentially could be hand-fed, because they put seed out for the birds, and so they come quite close to the viewing area. And as it happened, because I always carry sunflower hearts with me whenever I'm going out. Just
do you really? Oh, that's
yeah.
You're prepared. That's awesome.
Oh, absolutely. It's something that I really love doing. I don't mind that they see me just as a bird table. I was determined that I was going to try and get some slow-mo video just like Jocelyn does, because I want to be like you. And anyway, amazingly, I did actually hand feed we have a couple of small birds. I don't know how familiar you are with UK birds, but we have some birds called tits. They are small acrobatic seed-eating birds. And I had a great tit and a blue tit take a seed from my hand.
Awesome.
But I also had a robin, and it flew. What it did was twice it flew by and just grabbed a seed really, really quickly. It's almost like it didn't touch me at all. It just flew by and grabbed the seed. Now, I don't know if it was the same robin, but a robin did this twice. And then it came and sat on my hand, or a robin came and sat on my hand and took 6 sunflower seeds. So you can imagine how long it was there to take 6. And I was videoing the whole time thinking, this is going to be perfect, this is going to be perfect. And then just near the end, I thought, I can't see the red light on my video.
No.
What I'd done is, because I'd done so much turning on and turning off, because obviously when you're doing the slow-mo, you don't want to be recording hours and hours of nothing happening while you're waiting for a bird to come on your hand. So I'd been doing an awful lot of turning on, turning off, and I just got the sequence wrong. And it was sat there taking 6 sunflower seeds. And I was thinking, this is going to be perfect. I'm going to have this beautiful robin that everyone loves, and it's right on my hand here. It's in focus. Everything's wonderful.
Oh, no.
And it was right near the end. I thought, there's no red light. And as I pressed it, that was just the point it flew away. And I was like, no.
Oh, no.
And that was it. I mean, it was getting dark by then. So I did manage to get one slow-mo of a little blue tit who had very grubby looking feathers. So it was like, I think he was probably a bit braver. But all the time I was thinking, I want to do this so I can show Jocelyn my slow-mos of the birds here. But yes, so you do influence other people.
Well, it is just watching them in slow motion. Like I can see things in the video that I don't see in person, because it happens, and I'm sure you realize this as well, like it happens so fast. Like there'll be times where, I'll just see a scuffle, like something happened, but they're just too fast for our eyes. And the slow motion will be like, oh, this bird landed on this other bird's head, like something that I couldn't see with my, eyes. So it's like, the slow motion has been really, I think, eye-opening in seeing like the behavior of these little birds.
Right, yeah, and I've noticed that from looking at what you've shown, and also things like the different types of birds that come, like, for example, the way the woodpeckers fly to your hand, or the nuthatches fly in and out, and who takes precedence at the hand, and how they are very much aware of the other birds around them, even while they're on your hand and taking food. And when you look at those slow-mo videos, you learn so much more about the pecking order and how they behave. So I have never seen a tufted titmouse. Having seen your beautiful photographs and video, it's one of the birds I would love to see. Can you tell me a little bit about that bird? Because it's much larger than I thought. Hearing the name titmouse makes me think of our tits, which are relatively small birds, but it's quite a large bird, isn't it?
Yeah, so they're about sparrow-sized, and they weigh about 3 times as much as our chickadees. They act similar to chickadees, and that they hoard seeds in the fall and the winter. They will hang out with the chickadees and the nuthatches during the colder months. They're actually in the same family as the chickadees. They, in the summertime beating, the chickadees, I feel like they're more curious. They'll come up and like see what's going on, maybe take a peanut or two. The tufted titmouse does not want to have anything to do with me in the summer. Like they're off doing their own thing. When it comes to the colder months, they are, I would say, a little bit more aggressive, but I think that has to do with the pecking order. Like they just outweigh the chickadees, and they'll usually go toe-to-toe with the nuthatches. But they're very cute birds. They have I like to think of them like Disney birds with like their big dark eyes, and they're just such cute birds, and they do have a little bit of attitude to them. Like I think of their little tuft as an exclamation point. Like when they see something that interests them, it goes boop, they just pop that right up. Like it cracks me up. Like some of my favorite videos are when like they fly to my hand and they see a treat that they like, and like their tuft like goes up. They're like, ooh, this looks delicious. So it's really just like, they're just such cute birds. Like I love their attitude. And they're they're just they're fun to photograph. They're fun to watch. They're just such great birds.
You posted a particularly beautiful photograph of one, a really lovely portrait.
Oh, thank you.
And I can totally see how, especially with the mobile crest, it's almost like they're using it to query things. I can totally see how that would be really, really endearing. So that's definitely on my list of birds that I'm looking forward to seeing next time I come over. What's the biggest bird that you've hand-fed that's sat on your hand?
So that would be the red-bellied woodpecker. So the larger birds, they're typically more shy. So I was very excited that the female red-bellied woodpecker, one of those, has decided to start hand feeding. So the red-bellied would be the largest. The other ones are the red-winged blackbirds. And one day I had a blue jay feed from my hands, and that was very exciting.
The red-bellied woodpeckers are a little bit smaller than blue jays?
They're actually a little bit bigger.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, they're definitely, they feel heavier. Again, the blue jay was very just like grab a peanut and go. And I've had some blue jays like hang very close, like I'll be on the trail and they'll be right next to me, and I can tell that they're thinking about grabbing a peanut, but I haven't had one try except for that one day in August. And some blue jays migrate, so I wonder if the blue jay that was feeding from people's hands decided to take a trip south, which honestly, if I could fly south, I'd be doing the same thing.
Yes.
But yeah, the red-bellied woodpecker, and I hold my breath a little bit, like when I see him thinking about it, because they're I love all birds, but like having a woodpecker on your hand is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I can imagine feeling very honoured that they've chosen to feed from you. Just on the point of feeding, though, you mentioned that lots of people in the park do that. What's the behaviour like of the people generally with the birds? Is it that most people are very mindful of the birds and feeding correct type of foods, or are there difficulties with the feeding of the birds?
So I would say a large majority of the people are very respectful for the birds. We're not supposed to feed turkeys or the sandhill cranes at the park. And the reason for this is that these birds will get aggressive towards people. And, it's one thing to have a little chickadee angry at you. Like I've had one peck at my hand before because I was not fast enough with the peanuts. And like it's a little chickadee, like that's not a biggie. But when you have a turkey that's not too happy with you, or sandhill crane, and they're used to people because they know this is where the food comes from, there are some people that will feed those birds. And I understand how tempting it is because, like, here's this beautiful, like, 4-foot sandhill crane and it's coming right up to me. I'm going to give it some food. But I have been chased by those birds on the trails during the summer, and it is terrifying. Like, that beak is big, and I'll be walking down the trail and I'll hear something behind me and I'll turn around and all of a sudden, like, there's this, 5-foot wingspan coming at it gets intense. But I would say, large majority of the people, like, they're being respectful of the birds. They're just standing there with their hand out, letting the birds come to them. So this park gets incredibly busy, and the park does have people walk around. So if people are feeding, like, the chipmunks, I've seen people feeding raccoons, they'll let people know, like, that's not a good idea because these animals will tend to get aggressive.
Oh, that's good that the majority of people are mindful of the birds that they're feeding. Now, you mentioned a little bit there about the sandhill cranes, and I've never seen them, but I became a lot more familiar with them last year when you were posting lots of photos and videos about a particular family. Can you tell me a bit about that, please?
Oh, absolutely. So last May, a pair of sandhill cranes, and these are actually a couple of cranes that have not migrated. They hang out in the park all year. They built a nest, and a pair of Canada geese laid an egg in this nest. So the sandhill cranes chased the geese away, but they also added their own egg to the nest, and they ended up hatching a Canada goose and a sandhill crane. So the goose hatched first, and then a couple days later, the sandhill crane hatched, which was nobody had heard of this happening before, the sandhill cranes raising a goose. And I remember the first time I saw this family. So here's this tiny little orange fluffy gosling, and he's just walking around like he's eating grass. And I was like, well, where's the sandhill crane chick? And I remember the mama bird getting up, and here's this like so soft and fluffy sandhill crane. Like he's maybe like 4 or 5 inches tall. And I remember his legs were shaking. And I don't know if it was because it was a colder day or if it was just like because these are brand new legs and he's learning how to use them. And it was interesting to see the gosling, again, just a couple days old, very confident. He's walking around. He's eating grass, like mama bird's giving him some worms. He's eating those. And the sandhill crane colt was more unsteady on his feet. And sandhill crane families, usually only one of the chicks survives until adulthood. So I'm like, oh, I wonder if like they're both going to survive. Like, are they going to both, grow up together? Which they did for a few months. And it was just about every day I was out there like seeing like what the dynamic was, how they were doing, because they grow so incredibly fast. And so this was in early May when they were hatched. And I would say in June, where the goose was really starting to get his adult plumage in, that they were still hanging out together. It was fun to watch, like the sandhill crane would start running down the path, and then the Canada goose would start running down him. So like the goose was like mimicking his brother. It's like that was really sweet to see. I did notice that as the young crane got older and older and his legs got longer and longer, the goose would sit down a lot because I think his little legs got tired, because the cranes do a lot of walking around. And I think his little legs just like, it was a lot for his little legs. So a lot of times he would just like plop himself down on the trail.
I'm just thinking back to some of the photographs that you posted, which were really wonderful to see, really amazing photographs, because you didn't just capture them, you captured moments that felt like it was saying so much more than just a photograph. And one in particular where they're walking down the lane, the adults are walking down and the two youngsters are walking with them, and you're looking from behind, and you can really see the difference between the sort of lankiness of the young sandhill crane and the sort of waddliness of the young Canada goose. Really evocative photographs with the sunlight in the air, and I know I think you posted some videos as well, didn't you, of them all? Did you post videos, or am I just imagining that?
No, I did post a couple. There was one, and I've only posted a few. There was one where like the goose was sitting down under a bench, and there was a chipmunk that was running around. And the young sandhill crane was like, ooh, like, what's this? And then like the chipmunk runs down into the hole, and like the crane goes over and is like, where'd he go? And there was another, I don't know if I posted this one, but there was, it was a video of a red-winged blackbird attacking the sandhill cranes, because the sandhill cranes will eat red-winged blackbird nestlings. So the red-winged blackbirds are not a big fan of the cranes. Like if they get near their nest, they're going on full alert and they're attacking the cranes.
Oh, wow. And
so I have a video of the crane parents like walking through the water, and these blackbirds are dive bombing the cranes, and the young ones are just like looking up. Like you could see them look at the blackbirds and then like looking back at mom and dad, like, should I be concerned about this? And mom and dad are just like, they're just going to they usually keep walking and doing their thing. Like if the blackbirds are being really aggressive, dad will usually snap at them. But yeah, it was just a couple of videos of those cranes. It was mostly the photos that I was focusing on.
I think that's it. I think that you were posting sequences of photographs, and in my head, I've animated them to be videos. But yeah, so many photographs, and it was really amazing to watch them grow. But unfortunately for the gosling, it didn't have a great outcome.
Yeah, so it was a very sad day. So the Sunday I had gone out to the park, they were doing their thing. They're walking around, like they're hanging out together, got a couple shots. And then the following Monday, I noticed the family was going back to their nest, but there was no goose. And so I had never seen the goose. Like, even though like he would sit down for a little bit and then like run after the family, like I had never seen them separated. So I had not a good feeling about it, but I wanted to believe like he's just lost somewhere. So it ended up the goose was found passed away on a golf course, which that the family would go to the golf course during the day and walk around and look for food. So unfortunately, the goose passed away, and I was in tears over this. And like people had been following the story, we were, super wonderful. Like we're supportive of each other. And then I had some other people who are like, so you're crying over a Canada goose? And I was like, yes, he was a very special goose. And unfortunately, no one is sure how he passed away. I was trying to reach out to see if we could like recover the body, to like see if we could find out what happened. But unfortunately, he had already been cremated at that time. So unfortunately, we're not really sure how that goose, what caused him to pass away. The rest of the family is still doing well. I just saw them last weekend. It would have been very interesting to see if the goose would have joined up with other Canada geese or if he would have stuck with the family, because this family is not migrating. So that would have been an interesting thing to find out. But the current Sandhill Crane young one, he is still doing well.
Oh, good. Was there any interest from local organisations about the family? I'm thinking in terms of local Audubon Society or any other wildlife organisations that would have been interested in following how, because obviously I think the young birds will have imprinted. So the goose would have imprinted on the adults when it hatched. It would have seen the adults and just taken them to be its parents. It wouldn't have known that it was different from the parents. It's so easy to put human emotions onto the situation, but, having a sibling that had longer legs like the parents. And I'm wondering, do they eat similar things? So you've mentioned that the sandhill cranes would eat nestlings. I guess they're a little bit like herons, are they, in their manner, in maybe not fish related, but that they would eat lizards or...
Yeah, absolutely. So they'll eat just about anything. I have seen them hunt down a mouse, which was actually very exciting to see. I did feel a little bit bad for the mouse, but it was like, you could tell like they're really good hunters. They were feeding the young sandhill crane and the gosling a lot of worms. I've also seen them use their beaks to crack open nuts to get at the meat of the nut. The gosling was mostly fed, like I said, worms, but I noticed he would eat a lot of grasses, which the cranes were just not interested in. And I never saw the crane family get at the red-ringed blackbird nestlings. The National Audubon Society did an article about this family, and it was mentioned in that article that the diet that the gosling was receiving from the cranes was completely fine. Because that was a question that I had. I was like, I've never seen a goose eat such a diet. Is that okay? And that actually turned out to be totally fine, which is something that I found out to be really interesting.
I just want to say thank you for sharing those birds with us, because they're birds that I don't see anyway over here, but that's just one of the wonders of the internet, that, you can have a very personal relationship with a lot of the birds, and you can have very personal insight into the birds, but you can share that and we can take joy in that. And yeah, absolutely. I was one of the ones that was very upset when I read about the crane family. How did you get into watching birds in the first place? Why birds?
So I've always enjoyed birds. I think they're absolutely beautiful creatures. Like the feather is just a work of art in itself. When I really started getting into birds about 4 years ago, so I used to do a lot of running, so like 50Ks, 50 milers. So like for training for this, I'd be running for 4 hours at a time, and I needed recovery time. So like I would go and walk the nature trails, and I was like, oh, there's some cool birds here. Like, why don't I get a camera and just like try and take photos? And that absolutely like opened up my world, because I remember I was walking on the trail and there's this tiny little ping pong sized puffball just like bouncing around the bushes like crazy. And I'm like, what is this bird? I have never seen this bird before. And it was a golden crowned kinglet. It's very, it's related to the, is it not firecrest, golden crest, I believe?
Gold crest.
Gold, yes, thank you. So very similar to that. And I was like, how did I not realize this bird even existed? So that just snowballed, because then I was like, whoa, like, and then I noticed like there are these beautiful great blue herons around, and then just learning about all the birds that were just that live, so close to me, and I had never even noticed them. And then it's just the more I learn about them, is like I become even more fascinated with them. To give you an example, so I learned about the great blue heron courtship over the last few years, which is the male great blue heron gives a stick to the female, and the couple of times I watched it, like she would just grab the stick and then she'd add it to the nest. But there was one time where a male brought a stick to a female and he looked very pleased with himself, and she just took it and she just launched it. And I was just like, oh, that poor guy. And it's just like seeing things like that, like how did I not know like such a thing existed? So, and that's just great blue herons, and like learning about all the different species. And the photography allows me to really get closer to the birds without physically being closer, because like I use a longer lens, so I can get like, more details, get closer to the bird in that way. So really just being able to, like, the more I learn about birds, the more I'm fascinated by them. They're just such amazing creatures.
Were you already a photographer before you started taking your photographs of these birds?
No, I wasn't. So I got a camera again like 4 years ago, and I was like, I've tried to take photos of landscapes. I'm like, oh, this is a beautiful scene. I'll take a photo, and then I'll look at my camera and I'll be like, ooh, like not exactly what I was going for. So I'll take photos, like there are coyotes in this park, like, and minks. So I'll take photos of them when I see them, which is fairly rare. But like, I'm just like the feathers on the birds and the details and trying to capture their personality. That's something that I'm really drawn to.
They are stunning photographs. They're really beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
I do urge everyone to seek them out. My husband is a passionate photographer as a hobby, not as a profession, unfortunately, because I'm sure that was how he would love to live his life. But his passion is landscape photography. But he has started to sort of take photographs of the birds. And we were looking at your website this morning and saw that, I think there was an article on the website about what lenses you use, which is the same lens he uses. Is it a 300 to 500? Have I got that right? And you mentioned in this article that you prefer to handhold rather than use a tripod. He's the same. He prefers that flexibility for the bird photography, much more mobile. And he was asking me whether you ever used a hide at all.
So I've never used a hide before. The park I go to for the hand feeding birds, they're pretty friendly. Some of the birds, like the pileated woodpecker or the hawks, they're going to be more standoffish, but that's where the long lens comes in. But because this park is so well traveled that the birds are used to the people being around, there are a couple of other parks I go to, especially for warblers. Michigan is in I think we have 2 flyways. So super excited when May rolls around and we have all these beautiful birds flying through. And I've found like the warblers, like sometimes they'll be, lower in the bushes. They're just concentrating on getting some food. Like they don't mind the people so much. That's great that he uses handheld. I know a lot of my fellow photographers, they use tripods, which, does give you more stability. But I just love having the flexibility of being able to wave that big lens around. The one thing that I will say is, so I have these tiny little T-Rex arms that are not that strong. So I'll be holding, 6 pounds worth of camera. I'll be waiting for like a bird to fly or for something to happen. And my arms will start to shake. And I'm just like, this is a great workout. I'm going to get a great photo, And a great workout.
Yeah, I've got a bridge camera which has got a zoom on, so he keeps trying to persuade me that I want an SLR with interchangeable lenses, but I already carry my recording equipment around and my binoculars, and I just think having a camera that I've then also got to carry lenses for, it's just all too much.
It's a lot.
Yeah, so I just cope with the bridge camera. Often, unless you've got birds around regularly, you've only got a few seconds to take that photograph. And if you've not had a chance to practice a lot so that those things are second nature, by the time you've worked out what you wanted to do, the bird has gone. One of the things we were thinking of doing, because we don't, it's going places where there's birds that are used to humans, that helps. But even just like for our garden birds, we see them, but they're not very happy with you when you're in the garden. I mean, occasionally you can build up a bit of a relationship with some of them if you can see them regularly enough. But if you work, you're not often in the garden. So we have thought about getting like a little hide or something that we can... But the thoughts of sitting in a little tent in our garden waiting for a bird to come, I don't know. It just seems a little bit bizarre.
I was like, I'm thinking that's a great idea, because it's like, just get a cooler, get some nice snacks.
Oh, absolutely.
Set up your camera, like, you're camping. Like, that sounds kind of fun.
Well, certainly in the autumn or the spring, but in the summer.
Maybe not in the summer.
You mentioned about being on a flyway, and my previous guest, Stephanie Seymour, she's also on a flyway in New Jersey. How do you find out about that? Is that something that's spoken about to the public, or is it only if you get involved in local birding groups?
So I found out through local birding groups. So I am very new to warblers. Like, I'm still learning their songs as they just come through in the spring and the fall. And it was something I really got into last spring. So there is a website. What is it? I'm trying to think of the name. Hopefully it'll come to me. So it tells when birds are going to be migrating through. So it's like a heat map for birds. So in May, when we have these beautiful warblers coming through, I would check like every day and see what the migration would be for that night. And I would get super excited if there was going to be like a big migration coming through. And then I'd make sure I'd be at the park the next day, like seeing if the new warblers were passing through. And that actually helped me out quite a bit, because when a new wave of warblers was coming through, I'd be able to get to the park and then see where those warblers are. But that's really something, again, like when I first started out birding, like I never even thought about warblers. But like, here are these beautiful little birds that have flown for thousands and thousands of miles. And I was like, how did I not realize like these beautiful little gems existed? So that's something like, can't wait for May. I'm going to be out at the park looking for these beautiful little birds.
It's just fantastic. And you mentioned about the local Audubon societies. So did you say that you've joined those, or you're active in the local groups?
Yeah, so this is something that I've joined a couple of local Audubon societies. They're usually county-based, so I've been going to the Washtenaw Audubon Society and the Oakland Audubon Society. And when I first showed up, everyone has binoculars except for me. And so I'm there with, my giant camera lens, and they were just so incredibly welcoming. I appreciated the being so welcoming, because unfortunately there are some bird photographers who will do anything to get the shot. And so I wanted to be like, hey, I love birds too. I'm respectful. But they were incredibly welcoming, incredibly knowledgeable about birds. Like, they'd hear a bird call and they'd be like, this is such and such bird. They would let me know where good locations are for birds. So the trips I've been on with the Audubon Societies have just been absolutely fantastic. And if anyone is looking into birds, like if you're just starting out, if you've been into birds for years and years, I highly suggest someone checking out their local Audubon Society, because I've just learned so much from just going on a couple of trips. Those groups have been absolutely fantastic.
It's really wonderful to hear about them being so welcoming as well, because we all have our slightly different takes on sort of the level of birding that appeals to you. So do you have any photography tips for us about, for example, if we're lucky enough to do any hand feeding, doing some of the slow-mo recording? What do you use?
So for my slow motion videos, I've been using iPhones. I started out with the iPhone 7 and I currently have an 11. Those have worked out phenomenal. I did purchase a GoPro Black 7 last year because that also has a slow motion feature, and I have found the iPhones to be superior. Now the GoPros you can dunk in water, but there's really like around here not that many birds. They're going to be like 2 feet underwater. So it's really, my camera does take video, but it's not in slow motion, and really like I need a tripod to set that up. So really just using my camera has worked out great.
Yeah. Your iPhone.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, my iPhone. Yes.
No, because I've tried various things. I've tried. So I've got my iPhone, and that's what I used for the last day of the year when we were at Stover Country Park, and that worked really well. Except I don't know what it's like for the later models, but when you put it onto the slow-mo section, you have the first couple of moments are real time, and then it goes to slow-mo. Mm-hmm. And so if you finish your video too soon, as I did on one of them, where I had quite a nice little sequence of the blue tit had come back to my hand, but I finished it as it flew away. And it meant that when I looked back at the video, the only little bit I had of the blue tit was in real time rather than slow-mo.
Oh.
I had all the it's part of getting used to what does the camera do again, if I'd left it running longer, then I would have had it during the slow-mo bit, and maybe there was a way to slow it down again, but I don't know that. I've also got a GoPro that I bought. We were very lucky to go to Antarctica a few years ago.
Oh wow.
And and I bought the GoPro to go there as a supplement to my other cameras. And actually what was really good about having the GoPro, although makes me look a bit of a weirdo, I was able to attach it to my hat, so that when we were out on the boat going through various channels surrounded by ice mountains or icebergs or whatever, I could just set that going on my hat and have it kind of seeing what I was seeing. And then I still had my eyes available for binoculars and camera. However, obviously I must have looked pretty strange having this thing attached to my head.
But hey, you know what? If you're getting great video and you're getting great photos, totally worth it.
Wouldn't that be wonderful though, if you had it set to slow-mo and you had the birds flying in at you? You could still be filming your hand, but you'd see them coming at you. I don't know.
That's actually a really great idea. I might have to try that.
Actually, yes, because the other thing you can do is get chest harnesses and have the GoPro set to the middle of your chest. So that actually probably would work really well. I really do appreciate all the time that you spent with me today talking about birds. It's been wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing all those wonderful experiences that you do online. And I really do urge people to seek you out. Could you tell us what your Twitter account is and where else we can find you online?
Yeah, so my Twitter account is Jock A Photography. So that's JOCA and then photography. And then I post similar photos and videos to Facebook, which is Jocelyn Anderson Photography. And I am also on Instagram under Jocelyn Anderson Photography.
And then you have a website as well.
Yes. My online site is Jocelyn Anderson Photography Shop.com.
That's fantastic. And I'll put those links in the show notes so that everyone can find out where to find you. Thank you so much for your time today. I've really, really enjoyed speaking with you.
I just want to say thank you so much, Susie. It's been wonderful chatting about birds. Like anytime I can talk about birds, I will talk about birds. I really want to encourage people, like if you're a beginning birder, to really, again, go out and join some groups. Like don't be intimidated. I mean, there's a lot of knowledge there, but everyone is super warm and welcoming. And that bird watching, research has shown, is actually good for your health. So if you're thinking about buying like a new bird feeder, you're looking about getting into it, you are investing in your health. So I'd encourage people to go ahead and do that. I mean, birding is just such, birds are absolutely everywhere. They're just wonderful creatures. So I encourage anyone, if you're thinking about going, like learning more about it, I encourage people to go ahead and do that.
I loved speaking with Jocelyn about her experiences. Do visit her website where you can view her gorgeous photographs and buy prints and other goodies. And do look for her slow-motion videos of birds taking food from her hand. They're fascinating and quite calming to watch. Find them on Twitter and Instagram. The links are in the show notes. Do let me know what birds you've seen recently. I love to hear about them. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram or Facebook. Please tag me in your posts. Oh, and I now have SpeakPipe on my website at casualbirder.com. This allows you to leave a voice recording so you can tell me about your sightings. It's totally free to use. Look out for the button on my website. Make sure you don't miss any episodes by subscribing to the show. Subscribing is free and you can do it wherever you listen. Thank you to Randy Braun for designing the artwork for the show. The theme music is Short Sleeve Shirt by the Drones. Thanks to them for letting me use it. Check out their website at dronesmusic.net. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you'll join me again for another episode of the Casual Birder podcast.